I'm Donnie.
And I'm Anthony.
And we make up the GW Branding Group, here to bring you the Off the Ground podcast, the podcast where we interview entrepreneurs and find out how they got their businesses off the ground.
Hey, this is Anthony and Donnie with the Off the Ground podcast. We are here today with Jill Cooke. I'm going to do a quick intro for us, and then we'll jump right into it. So the Off the Ground podcast is all about bringing on entrepreneurs, business owners, and getting insights and tips on how to get your business off the ground. So I'll let Donnie take over, and then we'll go right to Jill.
Yeah, so I'm Donnie, and Jill, we'd just love to hear a little bit about your background.
Thank you. It's a thrill for me to be here and to share what I do with everybody. My background is largely in business. I've worked for 30 years in business development improvement. I go into organizations, or I should say I went into organizations, identified their pain points, their bottlenecks, their complications, and then provided solutions with a concentration on HR, finance, operations, and administration. All the while studying neuroscience for 20 years, which really lent myself well to being able to improve culture in organizations. After doing that for about 30 years, I want to say 20, but that would be a lie, so it's more like 30 years. My husband and I had sort of like a relocation where we moved 4 times in 4 years, 2 of those during COVID. Once we landed back here in Illinois, I went back into corporate America just to find that it still kind of felt like my shoes were on the wrong feet. I would go into companies and I would give them some remarkable plans to improve their workforce and their operations, and they would only sort of half-heartedly implement my work. And my work to me is more about the fruits of my labor, not the finance. So even though I was very well compensated for what I was doing, when they didn't implement all of these incredible things I had for them, it was very unfulfilling for me. So I met with a girlfriend of mine, and we were talking, and she's like, and I can still hear her voice in my head, she's like, Jill, she's like, whenever you talk about business and finance and operations and neuroscience, she's like, your energy and your vibration just radiate out of you. I'm like, I know, right? And she's like, what are you going to do with that? And I'm like, I don't know, because I really don't want to go back to corporate America. And then she's like, well, don't. And I had this epiphany, and she's like, you need to go into business consulting for yourself. And that's kind of what opened the floodgates and brought me to where I am here today, sitting in front of you.
That's awesome. Yeah, tell us more about your studies in neuroscience, because I know that we had touched on that in past a few times. We've connected, and she's got some great stories. But I want everyone to kind of know about your studies in that field and how that relates to business.
Okay. How I got into neuroscience in the first place is sort of a sensitive topic, and it all began when one of my children at the age of 13 started demonstrating some manic bipolar disorder. My daughter was also very oppositional, so she didn't want my help. But what I could do is I could empower myself and educate myself to try to manage that from my perspective. And I was nearly instantly hooked, studying the brain, the anatomy, the physiology, the function, and mental health and mental wellness. And so to the degree that I could, I helped her, but I continued with my studies. And then, unfortunately, my youngest son, who is now 24, he started demonstrating some significant mental illness when he was about 17. But he, on the other hand, was very open to help. And so I'm not the type of person that's just going to follow a line of people and just believe everything I'm told. I'm a researcher, I'm a scientist, I'm a lifelong learner. And so what I did instead was I sought some somewhat alternative treatment for him, and we took him to get a functional brain scan, which actually scanned his brain and looked at every structure, every function, and how it was operating, and whether it was overactive, underactive, or completely inactive. And what they identified was that his basal ganglia, his amygdala, his left temporal lobe were all highly, highly overactive, and there was a part of his prefrontal cortex which was completely inactive. Because of this, they said he's going to demonstrate these behaviors, and they were spot on. It was almost like a DNA of his personality. And then as a result, they gave him supplements. They didn't like put on a blindfold and say, well, let's try this prescription, or let's try this prescription, or let's try this prescription. They gave him supplements specifically for what parts of his brain were not working, and it was a 180. And that really clinched it for me. My studies of neuroscience, I was completely in at this point because I saw how amazing the right treatment can be. Unfortunately, he decided not to follow the curriculum, and things kind of went from bad to worse. And then that's sort of what precipitated our 4 years of moving 4 times, trying to help our family. But it was a 4-year season of sadness and fear and loss for me as a mother. At the end of it, I was at the lowest point of my life, which I've never had any problems with mood disorders or anything like that. I'm super even keel. But watching my children suffer and my fear for them literally took me to the bottom. And I'm like, I need to find a way to heal myself, because what happened at the end of that 4 years is I ended up having to get a biopsy of a lymph node in my right armpit. Thank God it was benign, but my oncologist told me, she's like, where is your stress level? I'm like, I can't even measure that. And she's like, you need to reel it in because your body is giving you a message. She said, the next time, it's not going to be so benign. She's like, so figure out a way to reel it in. And that was really the start of the trifecta where I started learning about neuroplasticity. I went to Thailand. I'm like, okay, because when I do something, I go all in, all the way. So I went to Thailand to a medical spa to completely detox. So I had no food for 10 days. We just did juicing, probiotics, yoga, meditation, colonics. And then the most cool thing was ozone therapy, where they actually took out a good portion of my blood and put it in my hands in a glass jar, and then infused it with ozone, three molecules of oxygen, and I very slowly tilted it, and you could see that blood go from dark red to bright red. And then on the interior of the bottle were these little bubbles, and I asked about those, and they're like, well, that's the cholesterol in your blood. I'm like, oh my God. And they're like, no, believe me, you're in great shape. Some people look like they have pudding in their jars. You're good. So they infused the blood back in me, and I felt amazing. So I came back to the States, and I'm like, okay, that was great for my body. Now I need to adjust my mindset. And that's when I started learning about neuroplasticity, our ability to rewrite the operating systems in our brain to heal our thoughts and improve our life. So what started out as a study of anatomy and physiology combined with the study of mental illness and mental health now was combined with neuroplasticity, which was the perfect trifecta for me to apply that in my professional life, which was an amazing tool at managing culture and employees, and that's how that all happened.
Wow.
Yeah.
Long story, long answer to a short question.
Yeah, no, that's great. The fact that you undertook that study just really to help yourself and to help your family, best case scenario, is awesome. And then that had application to your corporate life is, it's not an accident, obviously. But how did you make that leap then from just sort of applying it to your day-to-day life to deciding to take it to your own business?
That kind of came with the epiphany with my friend, who I was contemplating to go back into corporate America once I got back to Illinois or to not, and she helped me find the clarity there. It's like, don't leave all of this that you've gained behind. This 30 years of success in business and this 20 years of study of neuroscience, don't abandon that. That's way too valuable. Apply it to business, but do it for yourself, because then you're going to be untethered. You'll be able to implement the things that you create untethered in business. And so again, with me, I don't half-ass anything. My daughter says, you whole-ass everything. So next month, I will have completed MIT's course, Neuroscience for Business.
Wow.
And then also in April, I'm starting my doctorate in organizational psychology, just to take it, the full way. I do have my master's in human resource management and my bachelor's in business. So again, just putting the package together in very comprehensive, nice little box.
I have just a curiosity question. Are these pretty uncommon degrees, the applied neuroscience, the business neuroscience connection? Because I know, I took anatomy and physiology in college, and when I learned about the brain, it seemed like a lot of mystery kind of goes into that. So to not only understand the brain pretty well, but then to apply it to business, it seems like a pretty specialized degree.
It is. It's in the last couple of decades, it's really come to light, and it was kind of precipitated by functional brain scans, being able to see the structures and the function in action. Previously, it was thought that after a certain age of 18 or whatever, that our brain was no longer able to form new neural pathways. Well, now they know that's completely wrong, and it's largely due to functional brain scans. applying that to business is a very, very new field. And I'm going to mention Dr. Tara Swart-Bieber. The universe is a funny place. It will give you the resources and the messages that you need to hear when you're ready to hear them. And so that at the end of my 4-year journey trying to help my children, when I decided it's time for me to help myself because I was literally getting sick, I just ran across a podcast, and it led me to Dr. Tara Swart-Bieber. She was a medical doctor who decided she didn't want to be a medical doctor, so she became a psychiatrist and decided she didn't want to become a psychiatrist. So then she became a neuroscientist, and
Wow.
that she finally found her lane, and she's actually on faculty at MIT Sloan, and she wrote the curriculum in the course that I'm currently taking, the Neuroscience for Business.
There you go.
Now you ask, how does it apply to business? Everything starts in the brain, not just business. Absolutely everything. I used to tell people that this is the nucleus of life, but it's even deeper than the nucleus. Science is always making advances. We used to think that the DNA was the blueprint of our bodies and our health and whatnot. Well, they now know that the DNA is not the blueprint. It's the epigenetics. It's our epigenome that dictate how our DNA creates new proteins. So it's deeper than DNA. So the brain, it's deeper than just, the structures. It's the neural pathways. So neural pathways are developed because all living things on the planet have the same parts of the brain. It's the limbic system. It's the fight, flight, or freeze. It's their survival instinct. Everything that's alive that has that. Us humans have a lot more brain. This is where we think and our creativity is, but we all share that very primitive part. And it's still fully active, and it's always looking for fear, and it is afraid of change, because back in the day when we're in the caves and there's saber-toothed tigers, we had to remember that saber-toothed tigers were dangerous, and that perhaps that tribe was dangerous, or falling off that mountain will kill us. So our brain was programmed to protect us. Well, now that we live these nice, cushy lives, and we have plenty of food and warmth, and our brain still doesn't know that. It's still in that fight, flight, or freeze. So that's what we are activated by. What is business? Business is change. And businesses that don't evolve will dissolve. So we have to be able to address change and manage it from a very abundant mindset, not a fear mindset. And that's kind of how it comes full circle with the neuroplasticity in business.
Wow.
Even further than that, some of the most successful CEOs, CFOs, COOs, they might be killing it in business, but a lot of them are deeply unhappy. Why is that? Because they're living in a gap mindset. And most of us live in a gap mindset. We're always thinking about what we haven't accomplished yet, what we haven't done yet, comparing ourselves to others, and forgetting everything that we've accomplished in our past. There is a great book, and it's appropriately titled The Gap and the Gain, and I recommend that to all of my clients. That's one of my first orders of business, is like, I want you to read this book, because in literally one or two paragraphs, it can change your life. It's like, stop looking at everything that you haven't accomplished yet, all the goals, your lofty goals, your ideals. Stop focusing on them, because you will constantly be in that scarcity lack mindset. And when you're in that mindset, your whole body reacts. It depresses you. It takes your energy away. Take it all and turn around and look at, oh my God, look at all these things I've accomplished. And when you start looking at all of the things that you've accomplished, it literally creates a stair step that elevates you, and it takes you to your maximum potential. So it kind of all starts right there.
That's awesome. I have a question for you. So when you say that there's, everyone's living in this gap stage, and especially like high performers, executives, CEOs, and you say that they all have like a similar, would you say that they all have like a similar mindset, or from that like neuroscience perspective, is there something that everyone is like, you could say, hey, these are all similar traits that they have, or is it kind of all over the board?
It's really all over the board, because I think I mentioned this just briefly a second ago. Our neural pathways in our brain are written by the time we're 7 years old, which is unfortunate. I mean, it helps us to stay alive back in prehistoric days, but it's also unfortunate today, because let me give you an example of a client of mine. She remembers the very first report card that she brought home, and her mother looked at it and was pleased. Her father looked at it, and he's like, we don't get anything but A's, and handed it back to her because she'd gotten a few B's. So he was dissatisfied. Her whole entire life, and this is something that we kind of realized in our interview, was that her whole entire life she has spent thinking that she's not smart enough. And so she's got these limiting beliefs that she's not smart enough. And even though, I mean, she's out there killing it in her business, she is an entrepreneur, a female entrepreneur. She's kind of a solopreneur. She's doing her own thing. She doesn't have a big team. She doesn't have a support system. She's doing her own thing. And she's making over 6 figures. Yet she doesn't feel like she's smart enough. And so that's the neural pathways. And each one of us have different neural pathways. Whereas her father made her feel like she's not smart enough. Someone else's father or parents, might have encouraged their child and told them you can do anything, and it's all about that, it is nature and nurture. It has a profound impact. It was thought for the longest time that there was nothing we could do about that. Well, that's been proven completely wrong. So to your question, everyone is different.
Awesome. Now let's jump into your business mind and more so how that came about, and what kind of your offerings are with that, and how it works, and how people can use that to their advantage in business.
Sure. So my business model has different arms of the business. The one thing that I really love to do is I love to go in and I have a program. It's a 2-day training program. There's 3 presentations that are specifically for leaders. One of them is called The Leader That Flocks Will Follow. It talks about how to become that leader that employees want to work for. One is called The Root, which talks about why neuroscience and business coaching have to go together, because the best business coaching in the world is only as effective as the mind that it lands on. And then the other is The Why, remembering, reigniting, and reinventing your purpose. Because we all kind of get on autopilot. We go to work, we do the same things, we've got the same goals, we have our KPIs, we have annual reviews, and we're all like on this treadmill, and we're just on autopilot. Well, we can't reach our maximum potential like that. And then there's 4 presentations that are for leaders and teams that kind of follow the same thing. It's a 2-day training, and it goes all the way through from brain structure and function and how it impacts business, remembering your purpose, knowing what to do for post-COVID employees. I mean, we all know COVID changed absolutely everything, and significantly in the realm of employee retention, attraction and retention. Employees had the upper hand all of a sudden because there is such a scarcity and such a demand for employees that they can demand all kinds of things now, and employers are having a heck of a time bringing in staff. So I talk about how to bring them in, how to attract them, and how to retain them, and how to increase satisfaction and engagement to maximize productivity. The fun factor is another one of the presentations, making your business a place that both your customers and your employees love. So it's a 2-day training. I go in, we kind of do a baseline. First of all, we kind of see where the organization is as far as productivity, limiting beliefs, and employee engagement. We kind of measure that, and then we give the training, and then I go back a month later and we kind of measure it again to see how much we've gained through that. So that's one thing I really love doing that, because I see some really quick benefits from that. I also do one-on-one mindset coaching. If we've got a leader, a CEO, a CFO, any of the senior executives, if they recognize the fact that they are unfulfilled, even though they might be like ridiculously successful, they just feel unfulfilled, unmotivated, and maybe even be physically sick, I do one-on-one mindset coaching with them, helping them identify their limiting beliefs, the things that are keeping them stuck, and help them to find their joy and their purpose again. And then the big package is I go in and I meet with the entire executive leadership team. It's a conversation that we have. I ask a bunch of questions so I can kind of figure out where they are as an organization. And then I meet with each leader individually to kind of go deeper. And then I go into the employees and I kind of evaluate the employees. And then I go back to my office and I develop a plan for that organization. And it could be 3 months, 6 months, a year. Each business is different. And so I can go in there and I can do an intensive with that organization and turn it around. And I've proven that time and time again as a direct hire for the past 30 years.
That's very interesting.
Yeah.
I don't want to give away any of your trade secrets, but do you have any just general advice for people? Because I think it's very interesting that you can use neuroscience to attract and keep good help. I mean, to have good employees. So do you have any, high-level advice for people?
I do, and it's the why, with a part of that presentation called the why. Remembering, reigniting, and reinventing your purpose. One of the things that COVID did is it really brought to the surface what people value. And it changed. It changed from materialism and wealth to family and purpose. So leaders have to understand that that's what employees are looking for now. They're looking for value, they're looking for purpose, they're looking for a very good family life-work balance. And then also to be a part of an organization that has a high level of social responsibility. They want to work for an organization that they can be proud of. It's no longer about the money. It's no longer about like the company car. It's about living a life of purpose. Things became so much more important after COVID. So, having said that though, leaders, and that's why I start with the leadership team, they have to optimize their mindset first. Because I can go in and I can develop an amazing program, but like I said before, the best business coaching and advice is only as effective as the mind that it lands on. And if I go in and I do all these great presentations, I'll leave and everybody's going to be, fired up and ready to go. I guarantee you, if we don't do the mindset work, 3 weeks later I will go back and they will be no better off and often worse off because they're going to be like, well, that was another waste of time. You have to optimize the mindset first.
Wow.
Definitely. So when it comes to your mindset and branding and marketing, what's your advice to people who are trying to start their brand, trying to market their product or service, and how does that relate to like the way we think, the way we act, the way we respond?
Mm-hmm. For any entrepreneur, any business owner who's trying to go out there in the world and do something, my strongest piece of advice to them is identify your own why first. And I'll give you an example of that. That 4 years that I keep alluding to was a very, very expensive 4 years for my family because I was supporting 4 households at once. Wow. So my savings basically had a huge hole blown in it, and we were just hemorrhaging money in my effort to try to save my family. So my why for a long while was recoup, rebuild. And it always felt, again, where was I at? Was I in the gap or was I in the game? I was in the gap mindset. So I'm also constantly learning and improving. And that's a good thing, too, because this is a muscle. It's like going to the gym. I can't tell you, meditate for 15 minutes today and you're going to be good. No, you need to meditate 15 minutes or at least 5 minutes every day. It's a muscle. You can't go to the gym once and expect to be buff. It's something that you have to do every day. So when my why was based on my gap mindset, my scarcity mindset, I was not feeling well. I wasn't energized. I was not successful. And I recognized this, and I'm like, wait a minute, I need to reevaluate what my why is. And then when I realized that my why is, what do I want to do? I want to go on vacation with my husband again. I want to do as much fun things as I can until the day I die. I don't want to work, trying to recoup all of this, thinking that I've got such a long way to go. I want to have as absolutely much fun as possible every day until the day I die. And as soon as my mindset there changed, I launched. So business owners need to figure out their why. They also need to know that everything they've done in their past is a journey. Don't abandon old skill sets. Repurpose them and apply them to your new purpose. If something doesn't work out, it's not a failure, it's a lesson. Okay? One of my biggest tricks is I never think about business when I'm tired. Because when I'm tired, it's so easy to think about everything that's not going well. So whenever I'm tired, I'm like, all right, I'm going to watch Netflix, Be able to turn it off, because that's one thing that entrepreneurs really struggle with is moderation, knowing when to turn off the machine. But if you keep putting yourself in a point where your business is stressing you out, you're not going to succeed. It's about balance. It's about being self-aware. It's about taking all of those negative emotions that you know might be going through those bad neural pathways and telling yourself, is that actually true? Do I suck at social media? No, you don't suck at social media. You might not be great at it yet, but you have the ability to be good at it. Rewrite the lie into a truth.
Turning off that.
Yeah.
You're right about entrepreneurs. Turning off that just needing to get everything done as quickly as possible. I mean, I'm up all night sometimes because I've got a little baby actually, and she wakes us up every now and then, and I'll get up and look at my phone and see a message from Anthony and respond to him at 3 a.m. and he's right back to me, hey, such and such. So I we relate to kind of being on the clock all the time.
Yeah.
That's a great piece of advice, I think.
Yeah, it's good to hear, because it's one of those things that it is hard to turn off. That, like, how do you turn off, especially when you know that you have so much to do, growing with the growing business. It's like, where do you find that in between? So, what are some good exercises and some good mindset, like, goals that people can gain or use to be able to start to turn off that machine in their head every day?
Okay. I'm just going to shoot them out as they occur to me. Comparison is a killer. Do not compare yourself to anyone else. Measure yourself against yourself and yourself only. When you get up first thing in the morning, do not look at your phone. Do not look at your phone. I can give you the best advice in the morning, and it takes 15 seconds. The alarm goes off, turn the alarm off, and think to yourself, this is going to be a great day, and I'm so grateful that I have the opportunity to get up and make a change in this world. Bam! You're going to go out there. Or you can get up and you can look at your phone, you can look at social media. It's like, man, they're crushing it. Crap, I suck. Oh, man, look at how successful. Look how happy they are. Oh, look, they're in Florida. That figures. Where are you going to go? You're going to go in the pit. Don't do that. Set yourself up in the morning for success, right out of the gate, before your feet even hit the floor. Wake up, be grateful that you have the opportunity. You have another day to make an impact in this world. Be grateful for that, be thankful for that, and just take a few minutes. Meditation for me has been an absolute game changer. There's a few practices I do, and this is all in my coaching for the leaders. And they think, I can't go to the gym for an hour every day. I don't want you to go to the gym for an hour every day, because you're going to be stressed out because you're going to work an hour later in the day. Don't. Even 15 minutes of movement. And then when you get busy and you're working, don't sit down at your desk at 7:30 a.m. and then eat a crappy lunch at your desk at 12:30, and then be sitting at your desk at 2:30 and drink a Coca-Cola, or I shouldn't be using brand names. Let's say a cola. Don't drink a cola, or a coffee with a bunch of sugar and cream, and get cranky and have a headache, and then at 6 o'clock you're still at your desk. That's the worst thing you could possibly do. Do not work for more than, I'm going to say 2 hours, because I tell leaders an hour, and they're like, pfft. So I've given them a little bit of leniency. If you're still sitting at your desk after 2 hours, get up, walk. Just walk for, even if it can be just 5 minutes. There's so many things you can do. You can exercise in your chair. You can practice breathing, box breathing. When you have that moment when things are getting out of control, box breathing, what do? You breathe in 4, on a count of 4. 1, 2, 3, 4, and then you hold it for 4. And then you exhale for 4. And you hold it for 4. And then you inhale for 4. So you do box breathing. Do that 3 times. It's going to reset your brain, and you can start over again. When you're feeling something negative, take control over it instead of letting it control you. You have that power, and do it immediately. It's going to be a practice, and the more you do it, the easier it will get. At first, it's going to feel kind of weird, and but again, you're going to notice benefits quickly. So diet, exercise, all of those things, all of those common sense things that we all know are so much more important than people give them credit for. But you don't have to go to the gym 5 days a week and go to a boot camp class, and you don't have to become a vegan, and baby steps, and you find what works for you. If you don't want to go and lift weights, then take a walk. If you can't run, take a walk. If you don't want to do yoga, practice meditation and breathing. There's something for everybody out there. So don't say you can't, because you absolutely can.
Yeah. those little lifestyle changes make such a difference.
100%.
I mean, even when I got this Apple Watch however long ago, and it starts every 10 minutes before the hour, it just says, hey, time to get up. So having that little reminder, I don't always listen, but just getting up and getting the blood flowing helps a lot.
Yeah, for me it's the dogs. I get to get up and go take them on a walk and get outside and maybe throw the ball to them. Play tug of war for a few minutes, and then I jump back on it. And yeah, it's nice to have like a refresher, and you feel just a little bit more calm. When you get back to it. So it's nice to do that, because I've definitely had times where I've sat in intense work for 6 hours, 4 hours at a time, where you get into that time block, and 4 hours go by, and you look at your phone, oh my God, I can't believe it's 4 hours just went by. So
and sometimes you notice your productivity after you just sit there for so long just starts to go
100%.
way down if you don't break it up.
Yeah, and then you get back to your desk and you look at what you did, and you're like, wait a minute, this doesn't seem like what I did. And then you're like, yeah, I was too tired, man.
That's right.
Yeah.
That's right. That's so important, because if so you've got 4 hours of work in, and you've got this much done, and it's done probably about 75% as well as it could have been done, because you're tired and you didn't get that break. Or you can take 4 1-hour sections, work for an hour, get up for 50 minutes, get up for an hour, and you'll have this much work done, and it'll be great work.
Yeah.
So taking those breaks really, really moves the needle in a big way.
Yeah, definitely. So, in terms of your own brand and getting everything up and running, how have you been able to apply what you've learned to, building your brand, and how have you been able to apply that to getting out there, networking, building your business, and getting everything just up and running? I
spent all of 2022 basically networking to the point of burnout. And I'm glad that I'm so self-aware that I could recognize when I needed breaks, and I would take them. But again, moving up here where I had never lived before, I knew no one. So I knew that I had to get out there and network. So all of 22, I networked. Me starting this in this area now is mindset is very on trend, actually. So I'm quite lucky that I had 20 years of experience studying neuroscience and neuroplasticity, because now people are really starting to like, oh yeah, there's something to that. I didn't recognize that and say, ooh, I want to study that. I've already been studying it for 20 years, so that positioned me very well to be the expert on it, and people love to hear about it. And something about me is I have this incredibly high level of emotional intelligence, which is a blessing and a curse. But I can tell when somebody's not quite right. And there's also something about me that compels people to tell me their entire life story. And it's been that way my entire life. And so that really positions me well to be the type of coach that I am, because I do genuinely care for people. And I will seek the best responses and the best actions for them individually. I'm not the type that's just going to be like, well, I wrote this program for you, here you go, take it. I'm there with them working through it, and I'm available to them if they have questions or they just need a boost. So getting out there, talking to people about it, wearing my brand, handing out some information, and just actually having a genuine compassion, and then being so good at managing operations administration. And that's the kind of thing, that's my unique value proposition, because you've got a lot of business coaches out there, you've got a lot of mindset coaches out there, but you don't have too many people that can do both of those things together. So, and that's where my friend, she's like, Jill, just do that. She's like, you got both of those things. And again, the clouds parted, the doors open. I'm like, I had this moment of clarity. I'm like, oh my God, you're right. And so starting with the mindset, we clean that all up, and then we go in and we fix operations. So being able to offer them that kind of propels me above.
Definitely. So that kind of leads us into one of the topics that we like to cover a lot in this podcast, which is finance and operations. So what do you think in terms of finance and operations? How does that build off of neuroscience, and what can people do to make sure that they have a good operation on the back end while they're out there doing their networking and getting their name out there?
I don't know if I understand your question. I'll answer what I think you
Yeah.
asked me. But as far as how did I finance and how did I develop my
Well,
operations?
just tips for finance and operations, and a good mindset to have when going into finance and operations, and understanding your own business, and just trying to find the right thing to do for you. Like what are some good tips for that?
How to set your own pricing and how to, keep the shop going while you're spending so much time marketing.
Okay, I got you. The one thing you need to stop doing is comparing yourself to others. You are your own business. You are your own entrepreneur. You've got your own unique value set. I'm reading a book right now, and it's called Values-Based something or another. I can't remember. I'm an avid reader, so I've got usually anywhere between 3 and 5 books going at the same time. But what it said, I was reading it last night, and it said charging by the hour is unethical, because if you're a great worker and you're knocking stuff out and you're doing a great job, then you're not charging enough, okay? You're not making enough because you're over producing. If you're really bad at your job, then you're ripping off the person that's paying you. So an hourly rate is usually unethical. So you do values-based fees, but you need to figure out what your value is. So that's something that's different for every person. Being very self-aware. It's like identifying, and again, stop comparing yourself to everybody else. Yes, I'm a business coach, and there's all kinds of other business coaches, but if I look at another business coach, I'm like, well, I'm going to model my pricing structure after his. He's got an entirely different value than I do. Identify your own value. And then if you're having trouble figuring out how to price that, there are all kinds of resources out there. I've worked with the Harper College Small Business Development Center. They've been very helpful to me. There's an organization called SCORE, S-C-O-R-E. It's the Senior Corps of Retired Executives. They are immensely helpful.
Wow.
Free. This is all free, too. There's a couple places. There's one in Geneva, and there's one in Batavia. The one in Geneva is called the Fox Valley Entrepreneurial Center, and they help entrepreneurs get things off. There's all sorts of free resources out there. If you can't figure it out yourself, seek help, but don't seek help from somebody doing the same thing that you're doing, because you guys are living in a bubble, and you can't unbiasedly, measure your value. You've got to talk to somebody from a client perspective to measure that value. Now, as far as marketing goes, make sure you understand, first of all, what your unique value proposition is, what sets you aside, and then hone that in. There is a psychology of selling, and that includes fonts, colors, words. Make sure that either A, you understand those, or you get somebody who does, and then be consistent. Be consistent with your message, your font, your colors, and your words. Consistency is key. And consistency in those tangible, visible elements, but also consistent with your presence. I'm not a big fan of social media, but I know its power. So, and this is for every entrepreneur, and actually every single human on the planet, be careful with social media, because it can make you sick. I mean, it's a time killer. You can get lost. You can go down rabbit holes.
Oh, yeah.
When you start doing that, and I'm going to plant this in everybody's brain. I'm looking at the camera right there. When you're doing that, ask yourself all of a sudden, am I gaining anything? What am I gaining? Is this helping my health? Is this helping my finances? Is this helping my family? Or is this just wasting time? Because I'll guarantee you, a lot of it's just wasting your time. So don't waste your time. Don't compare yourself to others. So my involvement with social media now is very, very self-serving. Self-serving for my business, but guess what my business is? My business is I'm serving my business owners, my leaders and my entrepreneurs.
Yeah.
So make sure that whatever you do on social media moves your needle forward, and it adds to your life. It doesn't subtract from it. For example, I work with senior level executives. Am I going to go and make a bunch of TikToks? No. I'm going to go on LinkedIn.
Yeah.
Okay. Know where you should be, and know how often and what you should put there. It's all about educating yourself as far as your marketing.
Yeah, you're right on with all that. I mean, Anthony and I are into branding, and it's a big part of what we do. We develop branding guides, which is just what you're talking about, the fonts, the colors, you want to put out that specific message and know exactly who you're marketing to. I mean,
Right.
that's key.
Yeah, consistency is key with that. Especially too with today's age when there are so many brands now.
So much noise too out there.
Yeah.
Mhm.
So that makes total sense. So we really do appreciate that, because I think a lot of people are gonna get that. So if you guys are listening, stop scrolling on TikTok.
Even if you find this on TikTok, stop after this.
Stop right now.
Yeah, get off your phone. Get off your phone. So
Yeah.
no, that's great. And what are some stories of people that you've seen, that you've worked with, and what was like their mindset? If you had any great examples, what was their mindset going into it, and how have you seen that change? I mean, just give us a couple of good examples and some stories that you think people would find helpful.
Okay. One of the situations where I had the most impact, or the potential, I'm going to say potential to impart the most impact, was I worked for a global organization that had done a complete reorg from the executive team down during COVID. So they had gotten, and I was brought in to manage the North America reorganization of this company. So they had severed like 86 employees and then hired about 84 back, but they put everybody in different departments. They reorganized all of the departments, and then they replaced the entire executive team. This is all during COVID.
Wow.
Yeah, it was a lot. But what they didn't do is they didn't know how to reboot operations post-COVID. So you've got this completely fractured company that had a very, very toxic legacy leadership group. It was almost the worst I'd ever seen.
Wow.
I was a prison guard for a while. That was the worst I'd ever seen. That was in my early 20s. But this was a close second. So I was brought in to manage all of that. So the first thing I was hired to do was to identify all of the vacant retail space, or office space. Like, we have a bunch of people that are gone. We hired a bunch of people. So I reorganized the office space to put our complementary teams together. So HR would be next to the HRIS system. We would put finance by accounting, marketing by creative, right? And so I rearranged all the desks. I put all the people where they're supposed to be. And then I developed a plan. We were still very, very COVID-y at the time, taking social distancing into consideration. I'm like, this is what we need to do. So we've got new employees, we've got legacy employees. Nobody knows each other. These teammates have no idea who each other are. And what the company needed to do was to come in and have all the employees clean out their desks, and so we could move them all around. I'm like, let's do this. Let's bring in these complementary teams together at the same time, taking into consider social distancing. Let's bring the legacy employees and the new employees in at the same time. Let's offer them lunch. Let's have some music. Let's have some swag on their desk. Let them know that we're happy they're here. They can network. They can get to know each other as teammates. And they can meet this amazing new executive team that you have brought in, because the new team was great. I mean, the CEO, the president, the chief, the vice president of HR, a complete 180 from where it was. Before I started this program, I did an employee engagement and satisfaction survey, and it was bleak, to say the least. I'm like, I can fix this. So I made this program, and all it would have taken would have been the cost of maybe a lunch per head, right? So that was what we were going to do. I was going to glue that organization back together. What they did instead was they sent out an email that said, anytime in the next 2 weeks, come out and clean out your desks, more to follow. Any questions, contact Jill Cooke. And I went, oh my God. I'm like, are you kidding me? So that's what they did. For reasons I have my own opinions of why they did it that way, but that's not for this podcast. But I stayed throughout that 2 weeks, and as employees came in, because I would get an alert on my machine that the security door had been open, I would go and I would talk to these employees, and I'd say, here's what's happening. Because they all thought they were being fired, because they had just severed like 86 employees.
Yeah.
So come clean out your desk. Everybody thought they were fired. So I spent 2 weeks just comforting people and telling them the truth. This is what's really happening. And at the end of the 2 weeks, I left. I'm like, yeah, you can have this. But then 2 months after I left, the executive team left. So it wasn't me. And I'm not sure exactly what happened after the fact, but when I found out, especially when the president left, I'm like, that was a ship that was already sunk. But that's the kind of thing that I do. I fix those cultures. I worked for a combined cycle gas and steam plant, an energy plant. kind of the same thing. I went in, and the previous HR lady there, she was not approachable, to say the least. She was kind of crunchy. And so when I came in, the plant was just, it was gray. It was just sad. The people were sad. And so what I did, the very first thing I did, I went to work every day about 15 minutes early, and I would walk the floors, and I would talk to everybody. And little by little, it wasn't even slow. It was quickly, the sun came out at that plant. And it was just amazing, because I do genuinely care about people. And when you genuinely care about people, when you can listen to their problems and genuinely care about them, it can turn things around. So, and there's just example after example of that sort of thing. Leading from the heart and using my years of experience combined with that is quite magical.
Yeah.
I have just a quick question for you. You know, you mentioned earlier one of your clients was sort of a solopreneur and a lone wolf. Is that kind of how you operate? Because I notice you're mostly just talking about how you've gone your own way and you do all this consulting and everything. Do you have a support system for yourself?
Not yet. I'm looking for that perfect person. You can contact me. We'll talk about that later. But I'm looking for that person that has that. And actually, I'm starting a training program April 15th, and part of that, it's actually a grant-sponsored training program for business consultants, and part of that is I actually have to go out and find my own pod. We have to work in pods. So I'm kind of on the lookout right now for someone who loves people, who loves neuroscience, who loves business. So I need at least 2 people. Internet.
That's awesome. That's awesome. So what do you have in terms of plans for the future? Do you have anything that you're planning, anything that you kind of want to talk about that people would find interesting?
Well, much like you guys, I am planning on launching a podcast. That probably won't be until like the 3rd or 4th quarter of this year. I'm thinking probably the 4th quarter. I'm lining up some guests right now and some topics, but I really need to get my own business processes here really streamlined. So podcasting, and then just doing presentations, public speaking events, and I love public speaking. A lot of the times I can do that for no cost, which I'm afraid that I just said that on the internet, but I did. But it's what I love to do. So.
Yeah. So what kind of public speaking do you do? What are good events that you think you would like to do, and how do you get into public speaking too? Because that's something that we see all these people that get up on stage and they're doing it, but how do you start with that? How do you reach out to somebody to get into an event?
So kind of like you and I started at the same time with Geneva Chamber of Commerce, working with chambers of commerce, working with business alliances, going to networking groups, just volunteering, your expertise, and then word of mouth sort of happens. I do have some goals that I'm manifesting. I'm not going to announce them right now, but I do have aspirations to get on certain stages within the next couple of years, and it's basically just adding value, providing value, real, relevant, timely, specific value to people, honing your message so that it gives the most value, and it has to be relevant and it has to be timely. I need to talk about things that are happening now, and I know I keep referencing COVID, but COVID had such a huge impact on people in general. I went, where was I recently? I remember, I was at a meeting for a renewable energy company. And I've been to a lot of these different meetings for renewable energy companies. I worked in renewables for quite a number of years. So when a renewable energy plant is getting ready to develop a wind farm or a solar farm or whatever, they go to the community that they want to build in, and they have landowner meetings, community meetings. And I've been to, I can't even count how many of those meetings I've been to. Well, I went to one just last week, and it was contentious. Like, I had never seen people looking so hard to pick a fight with people. And I think it's post-COVID. People are hurt. They're broken. We all got a little bit broken, and more so now than ever in our lifetime. And it sounds kind of woo-woo, but people need love. And I mean, love sounds, like I said, like a woo-woo flower child selling flowers at the airport sort of thing. But it's not, because you can have a love for people, you can have a love for money, you can have a love for hate, you can love to hate. driving up here in Hoffman Estates makes me sometimes love to hate because I've never been so convinced I'm going to die in a car crash. But because I don't have road rage, but I can see how people can get it. But love comes in different forms, and we just need to heal the world. We need to heal.
So how does compassion and love play a role in business, do you think, from a standpoint of, people just want to understand, in business, at certain, there's always certain levels to it, but a lot of people like to know and really understand who the person is that they're doing business with, and having, I think, compassion is one of those top qualities as an entrepreneur or business owner, because you're able to understand what somebody's going through and put yourself in their position as well. So how does that play a role?
That starts at the top. And that's why I always start at the top, working to optimize the mindset of the leaders. Because if your employees don't trust leadership, if they don't feel valued, if they don't feel cared for, they're not going to give a hoot about your business, and your productivity is just going to falter, and there's going to be a high turnover rate. And those things are, turnover rate you can quantify, but lost productivity is a very difficult thing to measure. But it's not hard to measure improvements once you go in there and you improve that leadership mindset and you start implementing, initiatives that proves to the employees that they are cared about and that they are valued, and then you will see a spike in productivity. So that's where, and again, using the word love, I might be polarizing some people. There's some big, burly, CEOs, I'm not talking about love. Then talk about compassion and care. If you care about your employees, it is going to increase your ROI.
I think you're right. Needing love, it's not just post-COVID. It's always been true. But yes. I think what's particularly insightful is that how much the changes happen where workers and employees are demanding a loving environment, if you want to put it that way, an environment that's welcoming and where they feel like they're supported and they're friends with the people that they work with and they're connected, because I think you're right, everybody's kind of hurt after that time where we really couldn't make those connections for a long time, and then the shift of power where now you've got employers that are trying as hard as they can to bring on great employees, and the employees are saying, well, not if you have such a harsh environment.
Yeah, and they're competing against every other employer. And so, you really do have to position yourself as a employer of choice. And a lot of these employers don't know how and don't have the time. They don't even know where to start. And that's where I can go in and give very, very practical solutions, very easy to implement initiatives that is really going to increase the level of trust and engagement in their employees. It's not hard.
So another question I have for you is kind of like a two-part question, is working in an office environment versus now, as we've seen everyone go remote. And also, how do you, as we just said, how do you keep up with compassion and love in an environment where everyone is remote? Like, expand on that, because I think that's a good...
That's a very good question. I'm glad you asked that. You have to emulate and recreate that water cooler moment. You have to give them a platform that they can get together, even if it's just via Zoom, and just make it a social hour. You can do things like, for example, let's say I work for XYZ organization, but I also know how to brew kombucha, right? So I can go home and I can film myself brewing kombucha, and I can teach my pod at work, this is how you brew kombucha. Or someone else knows how to trim a dog's nails that's really aggressive. You wrap your head in saran wrap and you plaster peanut butter on your forehead, and your dog's looking, and it's just doing things like that. It can be by Zoom.
Yeah.
You recreate that social connection over Zoom. You give them the opportunity to do that and make it a priority. And leaders need to show up to those as well, because when the leaders show up to those, it demonstrates to the employee that our employer really cares about us and is interested in us as people.
Yeah, that's great.
Yeah, that is awesome. So, and then for people who work in an office environment, what can they do if they are feeling that kind of association with everyone in the office? If they're feeling like, hey, I don't feel like I fit in, I feel like things might be disorganized here. What's an advice for people that are experiencing that? What can they do?
From the employee standpoint?
Well,
Yeah.
from the employee standpoint, what's a good mindset for them to go into that on? As because sometimes it might be a good idea to jump ship, and do what's best for yourself. But other times you kind of have to work through those decisions as well.
Mhm.
I think oftentimes employees don't feel that they have the power to change a culture.
Right. Most of the times they feel like they can't change the culture. I would say the first thing for them to do is evaluate, is this an organization that I can feel proud that I work in? Do I provide a product or a service that I'm proud of? Okay, that's where you start. Do I like my product or service of this organization? If they like that, then it's worth sticking around. And then they can talk to their manager, and hopefully their manager is receptive to that. And they can even volunteer to create some type of a team building event and request it. And you don't know unless you ask, okay? So they go to their direct manager and they ask. And I don't say ask once, I'm gonna say ask once. If they say no, wait a month or two, ask again. And then at some point they're gonna know, okay, this is a dead horse and I need to go, right?
Yeah.
But they have to try. And if it gets to the point where they want to stay in that organization and they're not getting anywhere with their manager, find somebody like-minded in their team or whatever, and just kind of band together there. And it's all about mindset. I can sit here and I can focus on how much I don't like that person, or I can look and I really like that person. It's the gap and the gain again.
Yeah, I think even for entrepreneurs and people who are maybe solopreneurs too, how can they find that person that they can band together with, or how could they find those people that they fit in with? I know we've talked a lot about networking. You have to be out there, you have to be getting your name out, and I think a lot of that comes with finding those people. But how can they do that? What's a good way for somebody who's in that mindset? Do you have advice? Do you have any groups, things like that people could go and look at for
Yeah.
the solo entrepreneurs?
You have to leave your house.
Yeah. Yeah.
You have to leave your house. Find network groups that are specific to your interests. I like neuroscience, so I'm going to go find networking groups that like neuroscience. Subscribe to newsletters. Find your competitors and see what they're doing, and it should be more about community and less about competition, and that's a whole new world that we're living in, and I don't like competition, I like community. So find the people that are in the same industry as you are, become friends with them, compare best practices, and find the circles that they're running in. And there's apps out there that you can use, and you can type in exactly what you're interested in, and you can get a laundry list of things that you can do both in person and virtual. Find your tribe.
Yeah.
But again, you have to leave your house.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah.
Yeah, that makes tons of sense, and I think that just goes to show, you have to get out there. That's just one of the things that comes with being an entrepreneur.
Right.
And like you said, finding what your value is and what your why is, I think is absolutely amazing. So, yeah. And then now, in terms of what other things you've done, I know you actually have some other experiences too. So go a little bit into detail on some of the other work experiences you've had, and kind of how because I know you can source a lot of your information from a lot of what you've done in the past too.
Right. So I mentioned being a prison guard. That's people love to hear about that.
Yeah.
So they do. They love to hear about that. And I can actually reference some of what I do now into that. So in my early 20s, I became a prison guard at a women's prison. And I have a very high work ethic, a very strong work ethic. So when I'm hired to do a job, I do it the best of my ability. When you're a prison guard, that's challenging.
Yeah.
Because you've got all these inmates that are trying to break rules and trying to convince you to do things you don't want to do. And I was like, no. In training, one of the things they talked to us about was being firm, fair, and consistent. I'm like, I can do that. And so I was. Because of that, I got put on maximum security and mental health the entire time I worked there. Every 90 days, your assignment would get switched, and you could get like a cushy assignment like switchboard, where you just do keys and answer phone and never see any inmates, or these patrols, again, where you never see inmates. Or you can get minimum security cottages, medium security cottages. No, they put me on mental health and maximum security the entire time I worked there because I did my job correctly. I
Wow.
thrived in those environments because
Yeah.
I was firm, fair, and consistent, but also at the same time, I cared about them. I cared about their concerns. So that's kind of a demonstration of how having a strong self-awareness and a strong
Yeah.
backbone and being able to hide fear
Yeah.
can help. I worked in higher education because I love education. I worked directly in the president's office at a college, and I was able to deal with a lot of competing personalities. At that level, especially in higher education, you've got your board of trustees who all have really strong opinions, sometimes really strong opinions of themselves. And so trying to navigate and manage those while still getting your work done is tricky. And so being able to have that emotional intelligence and know your audience and being able to craft a message, and you can say the same thing 10 different ways.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
So knowing how to say that so it's the most well received by the person that you intended it to
Yeah.
receive it is a gift. What else have I done? I worked in energy for a long while, in a global nutrition company.
Wow.
Yeah, I don't have to get my resume out.
Yeah, definitely. Well,
Well,
it's-
I appreciate you going
Yeah.
over all that history because it seems like the through line is that everything that you do, you take a little bit with you and you
That's
apply
right.
it to the future. And I think that's really a great thing for everybody listening to the podcast to kind of take with them too.
Yeah.
Right.
You know, instead of that gap mindset of what haven't I done, think about what you have done. I think that's
yeah.
And you're right. There's something in every one of those that I've brought with me that I still use today.
yeah.
So all of those skills.
Definitely. Yeah, and well, we just want to say thank you for coming on the podcast, and it's been an absolute pleasure hearing from you.
Thank
I think
you.
some of the key takeaways are, be consistent, find your value, find your why, get out of that gap mindset,
Mm-hmm.
and get into the, build off the foundation of your accomplishments that you've done. Even if you have failures, those are going to be considered lessons learned. So, yeah, we appreciate you coming on.
Thank you so much for coming
yeah,
on.
Thank you.
Yeah.
We
You're
hope
welcome.
everyone can take this podcast and gain some knowledge from it.
And if I can just add one more thing, it's incredibly important that you understand that your mind can't be healthy unless your body is healthy.
Yeah.
So don't ever underestimate that. The mind and the body are completely connected, and so you have to nurture both of those.
Awesome. Thank you so
Thank
much.
you.
You're welcome. It was my pleasure.
Well, thanks again, everyone, for tuning in to this episode of the Off the Ground podcast. Be sure to like, share, subscribe, share it with anybody who'd be interested. You can always find us on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, and YouTube.
Yeah, thank you guys so much, and we hope you enjoy. Have a great day.